part 2 of the Suspense series on One Piece, I will be covering foreshadowing. If you haven't seen the first video, then I recommend watching that first as I talk about Suspense in more detail. In that video, I explored how timed danger brings upon suspense, and now I'll be covering how foreshadowing brings upon suspense. Foreshadowing essentially gives the viewer a sort of expectation or hint of what is yet to come. This is a literary device used in all sorts of fictitious works. Foreshadowing gives us an idea of what possibly could happen, and the anticipation of it brings us a different kind of feeling from danger. While danger brings upon loads of tension, foreshadowing commands all kinds of hype with its subtle and straightforward hints. That said, they both can bring upon tension and hype depending on how they are used. Timed danger and foreshadowing both call forth excitement and anxiety in their own ways. If you're a fan of One Piece, you know it masterfully showcases foreshadowing. When looking at foreshadowing, we can classify it into two different types: direct or overt, and indirect or covert. Direct foreshadowing is when hints are displayed openly, which allows for it to be easily noticeable. This allows you to openly suggest what will happen to build hype or tension. Essentially, it is you telling the viewers of what is to come, like what is going to happen or why this event will take place. An example of this was when Shanks warned Whitebeard about Blackbeard. He cautioned him to recall Ace and told of his dangers. All this is a direct foreshadowing to what Blackbeard will later do, as he will be responsible for getting Ace captured by the Navy. That advice from an established character like Shanks brought us suspense, making us wonder how dangerous Blackbeard really is. Another example would be when Luffy, Zoro, or any other main character state their goals. Luffy often states he's going to be king of the pirates. Zoro does the same with being the greatest swordsman, and we hear this so often that it feels like it is destined to happen. The hype and excitement we get from this adds onto the suspense. Narration and prologues are some notable forms of this type of foreshadowing. Another prevalent form of this foreshadowing in One Piece comes from the use of prophecies. An example of a prophecy would be when it was said that Luffy would destroy Fishman Island. Without this prophecy, we would never had considered Luffy to destroy Fishman Island. With the foreshadowing of it, we now have the event in the back of our heads, thinking about how it will go down, why it will happen, and so on. Not all prophecies are built the same though. Some are more subtle, like Kozuki Toki's prophecy, which is more mysterious. It suggests what will happen, but it is more open to interpretation. This leads to the other form of foreshadowing, covert or indirect. This is when the foreshadowing is not openly acknowledged. It is a more hidden version of foreshadowing, with very subtle clues. Oftentimes, this form of foreshadowing seems meaningless at the moment, but later it affects the plot. In other words, it isn't outright said like a narration or a prophecy, but instead all the clues are there, hidden but there. One Piece is littered with foreshadowing like this, as Oda is a master at masking clues. I believe One Piece is the best at this type of foreshadowing, as we have all had our minds blown by the hints we glossed over. Some of the best examples of this are in relation to Sabo. The first ever clue we get of Sabo's existence was Ace's tattoo. On the surface level, the first thing you would think of is that Ace must have messed up his tattoo. I mean, Luffy is dumb as hell, so why wouldn't Ace be as well? That is the first thing I thought, and it is honestly really believable. But the tattoo has a deeper meaning, with the S representing Sabo. Later on, we see Sabo's Jolly Roger, and it was the exact same symbol on Ace's tattoo. The theory is that the whole tattoo represents the important people in Ace's life: Ace, Sabo, Crybaby or Luffy, and Edward Newgate. The tattoo was a very subtle hint, but honestly I don't think anyone would have guessed its meaning, which is what makes this an amazing example of covert foreshadowing. Another good example of the indirect foreshadowing of Sabo is the panel where Ace and Luffy were drinking to commemorate becoming brothers. All we see in the panel is the text, "From now on, we are brothers." But if you look closely, you can see 3 cups. We only knew of 2 characters at the time drinking to become brothers, so a third one must have surely meant there was another brother. I didn't notice this at all, and it still blows my mind that there are countless clues like this in One Piece. Ichiro Oda uses a mixture of these two forms of foreshadowing in order to create suspense. With the subtle or straightforward hints littered everywhere, One Piece easily creates all kinds of hype and tension. The cool thing about all this is that the creator Oda has foreshadowed so much already, and even more is yet to be discovered. As you already know, foreshadowing comes in different forms. It can be classified even further through how the foreshadowing is implemented. One of the techniques in which foreshadowing can be employed is through dialogue. This is basically giving hints through what is said by the characters. My favorite example of this is through Usopp. Usopp was a boy who was a compulsive liar. He would lie at every chance he got, and once he set off with the Straw Hats, every lie he told ended up coming into fruition. Through his lies, Oda had effectively foreshadowed what will happen. It was a very clever thing to do, and now, every lie that hasn't come true brings in excitement and anxiety, with us wondering how or when it will become true. Another example is the betrayal of Nico Robin. The Straw Hats actually had a stern warning from Aokiji, who warned that Robin isn't who she says she is, and that they should be wary of her. At the time, you would think, why is the enemy giving advice? It probably isn't true because of that, but that was not the case. Suspense was created from that interaction alone, and later on, Robin would leave the crew in Water 7, just as we were warned. Another way foreshadowing can be used is through the setting. Through the setting, you can paint a picture of what will happen, what has happened, and so on. One good example is in Alabasta. Throughout Alabasta, the setting was a war-torn land, plagued with droughts. City after city were in ruin because of the droughts, and we found out exactly why it stopped raining. All of this is foreshadowing the internal strife and suffering of the citizens. Near the end of the arc, with the help of Smoker, rain finally swept down into the capital. The rain itself was a good omen, hinting that the years of conflict and ongoing war will come to an end. This was a direct form of foreshadowing, because the impact of the rain from a drought-plagued country is quite obvious. The rain itself is what would break the citizens of the land out of this kill or be killed frenzy. The next example of foreshadowing through setting would be a scene with covert foreshadowing back in Logtown. During the scene, Luffy was captured by Buggy the Clown and was set to be executed by him in the same place Goldie Roger was executed. That alone shows that this is an area of high importance and mystique. The setting of this whole scene gave off a mysterious vibe, as if something big and unexpected was about to go down. It was gradually getting darker in the day, and the winds were whispering louder and louder by the second. As Buggy was getting close to ending it for Luffy, slowly the thunder starts booming. Just as Luffy was about to get killed, he was saved by lightning striking. Buggy was scorched by the lightning, but Luffy was unscathed. On a side note, this foreshadowed his immunity to lightning, which we see more in detail in Skypiea. The setting of this encounter again made it seem very mysterious, as if a larger force was at work. Maybe it was fate, or maybe even dumb luck. Being in Roger's execution spot alone foreshadows some kind of connection between them, whether it being the same dreams, the will of D, and so on. As it started raining, Luffy got his chance to escape. However, this was short-lived as he was captured by Smoker, while also meeting a mysterious man. With a tremendous gale of wind, the mystery man will help Luffy escape by taking out all of the Navy. We later would find out that this mysterious force at work was in fact Monkey D. Dragon, Luffy's father. The setting added onto the suspense of the whole scene, with the location and weather foreshadowing something unexpected. Also unrelated to the setting, we see a character who looks like Sabo in the crowd. At the time, his memory would have been wiped and Dragon was there, so it would make sense that Sabo would be there too. Foreshadowing through objects is another way it can be done. The Viva card is a great example of this. We first see it with Ace and Luffy. Ace tells Luffy to keep this piece of paper, as it will be a way they can find each other. Later on, we find out the paper itself represents the person's life force. During the Summit War saga, Ace's card starts burning up, signifying his soon-to-be demise. This is a form of direct foreshadowing, as it is a clear indication of danger for Ace. Another time the Viva card foreshadowed something was with Nami getting Big Mom's card. This foreshadowed the Straw Hats coming in contact with Big Mom eventually, and that is exactly what happened. Lastly, the poneglyphs will also serve as foreshadowing objects. They will help us decipher some of the main mysteries of One Piece in the future. Anyways, cover art will be discussed next. This cover panel shows Ace's and Whitebeard's graves. If you look closely, on Ace's grave you can see 3 cups once again, foreshadowing that Sabo could possibly be alive. Next up, we got this cover art, which has the characters dressed up as samurais. In the bottom right corner, it says Shibaraku, and that translates into a little while or for a while. This could be foreshadowing on how the Straw Hats could go to a samurai land with a dragon in a little while. A lot of theories also mention that this is a reference to the 2 characters who would leave the crew for a little while, Robin and Usopp. I am sure that there are even more hints in cover arts that have yet to be discovered. Next up, we got foreshadowing through the characters. This is one of my favorite ways One Piece foreshadows, as there's so many moments that hinted at character backgrounds and abilities. I probably won't have the time to cover every single one of them, so I'll just pick out some of the ones I like the most. First up, we got Mr. Prince himself, Sanji. We first see Sanji at the Bratier, and we come to find out he has no family. The name itself, however, suggests he had siblings, as Sanji can be translated into third son. Sanji also donned the name Mr. Prince during Little Garden and Alabasta. That was the first hint we got to his family. Zoro also mentioned Sanji looks like a prince of Dumbass Kingdom. Furthermore, when the crew was talking about ships that scale walls, they were all surprised, but Sanji mentioned that he knew of them, and it was later shown that Germa had ships that do exactly that. Lastly, when Mont Blanc Cricket mentioned how he had suffered from being judged off his lineage, he also said that no one there could relate to him. In the next panel, we then see Sanji stoically smoking his cigarette, disconnected from the convo as if he's seen some shit in his time. I also want to add that in Sanji's wanted poster, it said that he was only wanted alive, which meant that he was an important figure, perhaps from a royal family. Character abilities were also hinted at. The first instance of hockey we ever saw was in Romance Dawn, when Shanks saved Luffy. After that, it was Enru with his mantra. In Skypiea, it was mentioned that different places had different names for abilities, and later we will learn it is also called Observation Hockey. Momo is another character who has been foreshadowed quite a bit. In Zou, he mentioned he met with Goldie Roger, but it was shrugged off because Roger would have been dead before Momo was even born. He also said he remembered when Duke Dogstorm and Cap Viper were friends, which would have been many years ago, again before he was even born. Finally, in Wano, we all see his grave, along with the followers of his, all hinting to him traveling time. Momo's power was also foreshadowed to be the same power as Kaido's, as Dr. Vegapunk created a fruit based off Kaido's DNA and left it at Punk Hazard, which is where Momo ate his fruit. Rayleigh was another character who was foreshadowed early on, all the way in chapter 19. We see him ordering around Shanks and Buggy, and we are finally introduced to him almost 500 chapters later, in chapter 506. Perhaps my favorite foreshadowing in all of One Piece is that of Blackbeard. Blackbeard has been heavily foreshadowed with the number 3. One theory is that Blackbeard is 3 people in one, and there are many hints to support that claim. First, Blackbeard's Jolly Roger has 3 skulls. He is usually seen carrying 3 guns, having 3 beard braids. Based on all that, it may seem like it's a coincidence, but there's more to it. Blackbeard's character is based off the real-life Blackbeard, Edward Teach, but he isn't the only character based off him. Surprisingly enough, there are 3 characters representing the real-life Blackbeard in One Piece. The first being Marshall D. Teach, who inherited the last name of Teach. Next is Edward Newgate, or Whitebeard, who got the first name of Edward. Last is Division Commander Thatch, of the Whitebeard Pirates. Thatch is an alternate spelling of the real-life Blackbeard's last name, making Thatch the last character representing the real Blackbeard. What makes things even more interesting is that the Blackbeard in One Piece stole the powers of both Whitebeard and Thatch, essentially bringing all the characters based on the real-life Blackbeard into one character, Marshall D. Teach. Currently, Blackbeard has 2 devil fruits, stolen from the other Blackbeard-inspired characters. With this pattern of 3s, it is safe to say that he has his own devil fruit to start with, which allows him to steal 2 more. Or maybe he will pick up another one soon. I think the most plausible theory is that he has a mythical Zoan fruit of the monster Cerberus, a 3-headed dog that allows him to carry 3 fruits in total. This coincides with the pattern of 3, and also allows him to carry all 3 powers of the characters that relate to Blackbeard. Blackbeard's personality change can also be explained with this theory. Blackbeard was radically different when we first saw him. His speech on dreams is a big contrast to the backstabbing barbarian he is later on. This can be attributed to him switching to the 3 different beings inside of him. The first time we saw Blackbeard could have been a different person from the one that killed Whitebeard, and so on. This would also support why he has never slept. Blackbeard could be simply passing off control to one of the 3 people inside of him so that the other 2 can sleep while one is awake. I mean, if you had 3 people inside of you, wouldn't you do the same? I'm pretty sure they all would get pretty restless and bored. That would probably explain why his gut is so big as well. Perhaps that is where the other 2 stay. To cap things off, Zoro and Luffy also met up with Blackbeard early on. They then referred to him as this. Maybe this can do with the dormant observational haki in Luffy and Zoro, but they both knew that he was not a single man.
What do you mean by that?
With all the subtle clues and direct ones like this, the foreshadowing paints a detailed picture on what the biggest villain of One Piece could really be. The last form of foreshadowing I'll be covering is another favorite of mine's, Symbolism. First up, we got the Ace of Spades. Ace was the captain of the Spade Pirates, so the Ace of Spades is synonymous with him. Turns out, the Ace of Spades has always symbolized death or bad luck. Next we have Symbolism for the monster trio. There are theories out there that say these 3 characters are inspired by monsters / demons in mythology, with Luffy being Sun Wukong, Zoro being an Asura, and Sanji being Satan or Lucifer. Let's start off with Luffy. Oda's main inspiration for Luffy was Goku from Dragon Ball. Goku himself was inspired by Sun Wukong, so the resemblance to Sun Wukong fits to Luffy as well. In addition, Luffy's phone name, Monkey D. Luffy, supports that as well. Sun Wukong was known for being a troublemaker, engaging in combat with the gods whenever he could. And the same can be said of Luffy. There are so many connections you can make between the 2, like when Sun Wukong ate forbidden fruits to gain crazy power, just like Luffy eating the Gum Gum fruit. Sun Wukong, otherwise known as the Monkey King, has the ability to transform into different beasts, and while Luffy cannot do that, some attacks and forms do resemble different animals. For example, Gum Gum Red Hawk, Gum Gum King Kong Gun, and even his Snake Man form. That alone gives us some hints on some of his future attacks / forms, which is where the symbolic foreshadowing comes in. Another similarity between the 2 is that Luffy traveled the world in search for treasure, the One Piece, and the Monkey King did the same in his journey to the west. Next, we got Roronoa Zoro. Zoro resembles the demonic Asuras from Hinduism and Buddhism. They are often portrayed with multiple heads and multiple arms. We first see Zoro don this form against Kaku in Water 7, giving him the ability to use 9-sword style Kyotoryu. This form symbolizes a Buddhist Asura, which has 3 heads and 6 arms. A quick passage describing them fits the description of Zoro. Always desiring to be superior to others, having no patience for inferiors, and belittling strangers, like a hawk flying high above and looking down on others, and yet outwardly displaying justice, worship, wisdom, and faith. This is rising up the lowest order of good and walking the way of the Asuras. Zoro in general has many references to Buddhism. For example, Daibutsu-giri, which directly translate into Great Buddha Cutter. Another example is Santoryu Ogi Rokudo no Suji, which translates into 3-sword style, secret skill, crossroad of 6 paths, which is another reference to Buddhism. Buddhism is one of the biggest religions in Japan, and Zoro's lineage most likely stems from Wano, which is based off Japan. I'm not going to go too in depth in this because there are many materials out there explaining all the references. Lastly, we got Sanji. Sanji represents Satan or Lucifer in a few ways. First off, The description of Satan mentions he was a prince, which is what Sanji alluded himself to many times. He also rebelled against God and was cast out of heaven, becoming a fallen prince/angel. This is similar to him rebelling against his father, the leader of the German 66, and eventually being abandoned. On top of that, his attacks fall into this narrative as well, with Hell's Memory and Diable Jambe directly translating into Devil's Leg. You can expect some future abilities/names to symbolize exactly that. The thing in common between all these beings were that they opposed God, which in a sense is what the monster trio are doing as pirates. As free pirates, they openly go against the gods of their world, the government and the celestial dragons. The symbolization between these figures foreshadows what the characters will be doing in the future. Many forms and moves were symbolic to the characters, and it gives us more hints to their development in their future. You can even say that maybe the will of D stands for demon, as all three of these were based off demons. The cool thing about this is that you can also say the same thing about the Straw Hat crew. Each crew has certain themes to them, like Big Mom's crew being food related and Kaido's crew being rare/prehistoric creatures. Luffy's crew does not seem to have any theme, until you think about how each character could be symbolic of a demonic/monstrous being. That as well as each crew member defying the gods of the world in One Piece. It's pretty obvious Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji are based off demons, but what about the rest of the crew? This was a theory I saw from Cam Unai, so credits to him. The theory shows how each character in the Straw Hats can be related to demons or monsters, and the examples he gave were excellent. I will be using most of them along with some of my own analysis. The most obvious example would be Frankie, who is symbolic of Frankenstein's monster. The name Frankie itself is a dead giveaway, and being more machine than man/being more man-made is a huge similarity. Frankenstein's monster was often called a demon, which matches this theme. His creation is a symbol of man defying God through technology, which is what Frankie is doing as well. Next we have the undead Soul King, Brook, who would symbolize the Gashadokuro, a race of malevolent yokai that resemble large skeletons. They are said to be created by mass death and concentrated suffering, which is fitting to Brook's past, with his crew all dying in front of him. That said, Gashadokuro are known to be huge, and while Brook is the tallest Straw Hat, I don't think he'd be the size of it. Regardless, there are enough similarities to it, as even Orochi's minions thought he was one when they first saw him. This represents man defying God through death, as it is unnatural to survive death. Another being that Brook resembles is Baron Samedi. Baron Samedi, or Bwonsamedi, is the Loa of the dead, with Loa being a spirit of Haitian voodoo. At first glance, they do look similar with the skull and attire. Baron Samedi is known for being a chaotic spirit that enjoys interacting with others, which resembles Brook as well. This spirit has been labeled both a demon and a god of voodoo, matching the demon theme. Tony Chopper is the next character we'll be exploring. When on Monster Point, Chopper closely resembles the mythological creature/evil spirit that is the Wendigo. Wendigo roughly translates into the spirit that devours mankind. When Chopper goes Monster Point, he goes out of control and even attacks his crew members. That form resembles the closest thing to the Wendigo. It is said that humans transform into Wendigo if they are corrupted by greed or are weakened by extreme conditions. This creature is known by the North American Native Indians, mainly in Canada and the US. Chopper was confirmed to be Canadian, so this matches the description. Although the Wendigo is not a demon, it is a monster that was feared, getting to the theme of what the Straw Hats symbolize. Transforming into a ghastly creature known for pure terror and destruction symbolizes an animal defying God, with Chopper being able to transform into a human and a beast that the gods of the world fear. Wendigos also represent cannibalism, making it sort of a dark tale that corruption and greed will transform you into a cannibalistic monster. Next we have Jinbei. Jinbei can symbolize the genie. In Islamic mythologies, genies or jinns are considered to be demonic spirits. The genie who resembles Jinbei the most via look is the fictional genie Aladdin. Funny enough, Jinbei's first crewmate is also named Aladdin. The modern genies we know of grant wishes, and you can say that Jinbei did that with Ace's last wish to him, which was to protect Luffy after his death. Jinbei would go on to risk his life and save Luffy from Akainu. The other time he was asked for something was when the Straw Hats were escaping Whole Cake, and Jinbei wanted to stay back to help the fishmen. Luffy made Jinbei promise to not die here and return to the crew at Wano, and he did exactly that. I don't remember any other instances, but perhaps he will only fulfill 3 wishes before something happens, as genies are known to only grant 3 wishes. Symbolism like this foreshadows the fate of some characters. Jinbei symbolizes rebellion against the gods, with his time with the Sun Pirates as well as Luffy's crew. Usopp can also be symbolized as a certain demon, a Tengu. Tengus are mischievous supernatural beings that represent Usopp through looks and demeanor. They are known for their long noses, just like Usopp. Furthermore, Usopp often told lies as a kid, which is what Tengus did, as they often misguided and tricked people. Tengus were thought to be reincarnated warriors that were proud and arrogant. While this does not represent Usopp, it does symbolize what he would like to be. You can also argue that Usopp's alter ego, Soga King, represents exactly that. It is said that Tengus can roam around in groups, which is similar to Usopp as he had a crew even before he met Luffy and the gang. The head chief of the Tengus are said to have a large nose with a scary look, while dressing in a red robe. That fits Usopp's look as Soga King. Furthermore, Tengus are often symbolized with shooting stars, and most of Usopp's moves end with star. Usopp was also called Mr. Tengu by Kinemon. You can say Usopp symbolizes deception and trickery, as he continues to grow a godly reputation, even though his true personality and feelings are often hidden. Nami would represent a witch because she's been called one quite a lot by others, but also because she has weather-related powers. In medieval times, Tempestry was the name of people that can control weather. Sorceress, magician, mage are also some names to go by, but we'll stick with witch. In the age of piracy in our world, pirates brought witches on their voyages in hopes that they will bring upon favorable weather conditions. Witches were condemned for a long time, considered to be evil with demonic rituals and powers. That said, Nami does not use magic, but rather science. Even so, people of the past were often accused of witchcraft for the slightest of doubts, and in the One Piece world it's easy to see something similar happening with her powers. This further symbolizes prejudice and the fear against the unknown. Nika Robin can be related to Hypatia, a Greek scholar. Although all the other examples were mythological and demonic entities, Robin is compared to a real-life intellectual. While Robin studied the history of the world, Hypatia was a prominent mathematician, philosopher, and astronomer. She was also a pagan, and although she was unprejudiced towards Christians and even taught many of them, many did not reciprocate the same beliefs towards her. Hypatia was demonized by many for being a pagan, and was eventually murdered. Because of her religious beliefs, she was criticized to worshipping Satan and using demonic magic. Robin was in a similar situation, as she was considered to be a demon child for being interested in the past and was almost killed. Although she escaped, the people of Ohara were not as lucky as her. Another connection will be the burning of the Great Library of Alexandria. In Alexandria, Egypt, the Great Library was burnt down, and Hypatia would live in the same city. Although she was born after the library incident, it is a similarity between Robin, whose homeland had its library burnt down. Hypatia was a symbol of intellectual resistance against religious fanaticism. This is similar to Robin, who alongside all of Ohara is a symbol of intellectual resistance against fanatic government forces. It also represented the government and people of power suppressing information, all for more control over the world, which is something that happens till this day. The Thousand Sunny can also be related, not to a demon but an Egyptian god. The Thousand Sunny could be symbolic of the solar god Mehes. Mehes took the form of a lion, which is also on the Thousand Sunny. There is conflicting information on who the god's father is, but one of the accounts says it is the sun god Ra. Mehes was said to protect Ra and his boat as he traveled throughout the underworld. Mehes was said to be associated with war, protection, and weather, and that is also what the Thousand Sunny symbolizes: a bringer of war, a vessel of protection, and the conqueror of the weather. An important note is that the underworld is not considered evil in Egyptian mythology. In other mythologies, it is considered to be evil as it symbolizes hell. Since Meihis was in the underworld protecting Ra, you can make the case of the demonic theme, as the god was in the underworld, or hell, if you view it like that. But otherwise it doesn't really fit in the demonic / monstrous theme. Anyways, those are all the comparisons for the Straw Hat crew. Let me know in the comments if you have any others. Through this symbolism, Oda crafted a fun-loving crew that seems to be doing good in the world, but they in turn can be related to demons or monstrous beings. This adds on to one of the main narratives of One Piece, showing how the world isn't black and white or good and bad. Each character being based off demons / beings considered evil means that the characters are viewed as evil by the government, which is true in this case. All the symbolizing through these characters hints at what the crew will be doing in the future against the gods of the One Piece world. It also gives us some hints on what kinds of moves / powers they may obtain, and what type of allies they may gain. That said, all of this foreshadowing is not set in stone, which is what leads to the next part of the series, Mystery. What are your favorite foreshadowing moments in One Piece? Let me know in the comments. See you in the next part.
And fate has chosen me to conquer this world! Both are mine, and the world will tremble with my every step! Only a fool would dare defy me!